I'd like to welcome everybody to the November 9th, 2016 meeting of the City of Lake Forest Plan Commission. I am Michael Lay, Chairman of the Commission. I'd like at this point to introduce the other members of the Commission who are here this evening. To my far right, Commissioner Freeman, and to my immediate right, Commissioner Berg, and then to my far left, Commissioner Ruggles, then Commissioner Kerr, and Commissioner Culbertson. From city staff, Kathy Zerniak, Director of Community Development, is here tonight. And our first item of business is approval of the minutes from the October 12th, 2016 Plan Commission meeting. In that they're not quite finished yet, I'm going to defer consideration of those minutes until our next meeting when a complete draft will have been presented to us at that point. The next item before the Commission this evening is consideration of a public hearing of a status report and introduction by Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital. That is a status report on construction of the hospital campus, review the previously approved master plan, and to introduce to us continued refinements proposed to align the master plan with the build-out and prepare for the next phase of the project work on campus. So I'd like to ask, do any members of the Commission have any ex-parte contacts or conflicts of interest on this agenda item? Seeing none, we will proceed. At this point, I would like to ask to the podium Tom McAfee, President of Lake Forest Hospital, Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital. Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman Lay and fellow commissioners. I'm really delighted to be back in front of you today. A lot of exciting work. I know there's probably no one in this room that hasn't seen the progress that we've made on our new hospital, and I have to say that we are quite pleased on the progress that's been made, and love to be able to give you a little background on what we've been up to. It's been some time since we were together last. In fact, the land use plan that we'll cover a little bit later in the agenda was something that we developed over an 18-month period and completed in 2012. So it's amazing how fast 5 years has blown by and the progress we've made. Before we actually jump into revisiting the land use plan, I thought it'd be helpful to give you a little bit of an insight on how the project's tracking and what's been happening clinically, because certainly the new hospital is spectacular in design and will be an enormous enhancement to our patients and their experience and our physicians. But the clinical services that will go into it, the care that's provided within it, is also work that's been underway for the last 7+ years. And I have to say that that it's really coming together nicely. Today, around 75% of the revenue that comes into the institution is through Northwestern aligned physicians. You'll notice that the organization has evolved. Northwestern Medicine is the combination today of the what used to be the Northwestern Feinberg, the Faculty Foundation, and the hospitals coming together to form Northwestern. That's material because the organizational changes that have occurred at Northwestern over the last several years really will be manifested physically in the new building. We'll have an integrated electronic platform. The integration of the physicians and the hospital departments around the patient's clinical needs will be completely different, and it will change the patient experience in a very positive way. I could tell you that the clinical subspecialty investments that have been made in our community have been phenomenal. For example, Dr. Dean Suarez has now headed up the Northwestern Oncology program and is leading that operation. We are now bringing clinical trials and some of the most advanced developmental therapeutics in our health system up to patients in our community. We are now tied to the Bloom Cardiovascular Institute, which is one of the top-ranked cardiology programs in the country. And when complete, we'll also have comprehensive women's subspecialty capabilities that never existed on the campus. So for example, fertility medicine, Dr. Eve Feinberg recently joined Northwestern. So having one of the top reproductive endocrinologists on staff and actively taking care of patients that have fertility needs in our community is wonderful. We have robotic surgeons and subspecialty capability for the surgical patient population that, again, didn't exist before we began to invest on this endeavor. I can tell you that the new facility has been incredibly powerful in my ability to recruit talent into our community and provide care. So really quite excited. A lot of work is underway. You can see that the outside envelope of the building is complete largely, about 99% of that. The building is watertight, which is a nice thing to have behind us. The water feature on the east side of the building is nearly complete. In fact, I think we'll be activating in a trial basis the recirculation feature on that design in the next month or so. So it's really starting to wrap up. A lot of the perimeter landscape is underway. So we're very pleased to see that the project itself is tracking to schedule. We are looking at opening the facility on time. In the fall of 2017 will be the first where we begin to open some of the outpatient clinics. And then subsequently, when we have stabilized the activation, because it's a very complex project, we want to make sure that it's completely safe and optimized. We will activate the rest of the inpatient platform, likely just after the holidays in 2018. So that's the plan for the project itself. Moving forward and speaking to what's changed and what's remained the same on our land use plan. This is an image of the approved master land use plan from 2012. You could see that at the time, we really didn't know what the architectural design of the new hospital would be. You could see the square or the rectangular in the middle of the center campus was as much as we knew. In fact, the way we broke the campus up, if you recall, is really three different sections. The North Campus, where today our Child Care Center and our Health and Fitness Center are located. The Central Campus, which is where the predominance of the work that's been underway over the last 5 years, and then moving south to the South Campus, where the existing assets reside in the building. You can see in this slide, these are the setbacks and elements that really haven't changed and won't change as we move forward. So pretty significant setbacks and berming have been invested in, on the campus as a way to make sure that we insulate the activity to our neighbors. Now, what I can tell you is that through working with the community and the city, the new hospital moved to the east. So this is an overlay of the current structure relative to the land use approved concept at the time. So you'll see that the new hospital, the orange structure here, moved slightly east and slightly south on the campus. It needed to move a little bit south in order to not conflict and have appropriate setback from the Westmoreland Road. You can see that the water feature also grew quite significantly because we support the drainage needs of the whole region. You can see the roadways also had changed. Actually, late in the process, we worked with the neighbors to modify the alignment of access onto the campus so that we minimized through traffic onto Westmoreland Road. Also minimized the light impact of cars entering and leaving the campus, and was really a wonderful suggestion that was advanced initially by our friends over at Lake Forest Place, and we're pleased to see it lay out. So when you extract the background noise, you'll see how the building arrays today. These are actual configurations. What you should also note is that when we moved the building to the east, we also impacted a grounds building to the east. And in fact, I'll jump to that in a second, but just to revisit some of the other improvements that we've continued to make, we've maintained the setbacks. We removed the 700 East building, which was in front of the 800 medical office building to accommodate additional convenient patient parking. We also have made significant enhancement to the buffers around the perimeter. We really worked hard to heal the perimeter of the site and move that work up early in the project so that when the new hospital opened, it didn't look raw. So in fact, those berms around the perimeter, the trees that have been installed, are actually in some areas 2 years ahead of schedule compared to the original proposed schedule. So we're quite pleased that that work is taken off. We've also made significant improvements to the roadway. So if you recall, the desire was to move the new hospital to the north, add supplemental access onto the campus in the north to help mitigate traffic off of Deer Path. And I think that using that road much less frequently myself, we've seen a significant reduction in traffic and congestion in that area. We improved the right-in so that if you were coming from the city of Lake Forest into the campus, there was a deceleration lane. So we made some enhancements in that area. And of course, we added the access onto Route 41, which has also been a nice way of reducing activity. And then the new southern access road running east-west is also oriented traffic so that access to the campus is more northern in its current form. Now, discussing the maintenance facilities, we have a few outbuildings on the campus that probably many people don't even know exist because they are largely innocuous on the campus and have disappeared, which is the way we prefer them to be. One was just east of the central utility plant, which we expanded to support the campus. We took that down and we relocated in a temporary basis over to the northwest corner near Middle Fork. And then we propose, as we look to align the roadway, moving the location into a berm so that it'll be concealed and invisible really to everybody but the hospital in a consolidated fashion when we heal that portion of the campus, take out the lights, and restore the prairie where the temporary parking lot is today so that everything is consolidated, nicely buttoned up. The support buildings, building is where we house the ground supports functions, lawnmowers, seed, the types of things that we need to support the ongoing maintenance of the building itself. What's important also to note is as we consolidate those functions, you'll notice to the right, we also want to be able to keep the circulation to the center of the southern campus. And in order for us to have that done in a way where the campus stitches together in a thoughtful way. So if you come in today off of Deer Path, make a right and you meander through the southern end of the campus, it's really, quite beautiful. We'd like to carry that image north so that when it moves up into the new hospital, it's thoughtful and well laid out. In order for us to do that, we have to consolidate again that facility grounds building. We also are in a temporary situation where patients are now crossing the access road to get to 8900. And from a patient safety, community safety issue, we really want to make sure that we minimize that type of situation. That would also position us, we do plan to remove significant portions of the existing hospital to the south. So you'll notice that that's not noted in this plan. The exact parameters of which portions will remain, we haven't yet concluded, but we do know that holding on to a building from 1942 that isn't advancing the mission of the institution and doesn't really make sense for us or for the desired end state of the campus. Having said that, it's important that we accommodate everybody that is on the existing campus. So none of that work would occur likely between now and 2020 because it'll take us another year to be into the new hospital, year plus. We'll then go through a series of renovations of some of the existing buildings like the Hunter Center. The Hunter Center is well placed, it's a strong building. We'll need to make changes there and then subsequently go through, and once vacating those structures and providing the adequate support, we would remove the structures that no longer make sense to keep on the campus. So again, not till 2020. Now, another question I've often been asked is, well, when would you expect to expand and where would that expansion occur on the campus? Have you thought that through? Well, the truth is that we have no plans at this point in time. We're going to be completely focused, so we haven't even begun. But I can tell you that we've designed the building to be enormously flexible. So you'll note here The orange areas are areas where there's potential expansion. So in the land use plan, we had called for the potential flanking of the existing health and fitness center, maybe to provide some supplemental gym space for those functions. Again, it's in the land use plan. It isn't designed or planned at this point in time, but that's a potential. If you look to the south on the existing hospital, the most northern pavilion is 2 stories, so all 3 structures, and we're really pleased to say that we really pressed hard to reduce the building height, which you see today, because we knew that that was the #1 sensitive issue for the community. And I'm pleased to say that the final height today is significantly lower than what was in the land use plan through that effort. So really pleased to see that. Now, the north pavilion is 2 stories, but it was designed to go vertical 1 additional floor so that it would mirror the other 4 pavilions to the south. So that's one potential. If you were to say, well, what about if you have additional inpatient or outpatient needs, we have designed the structure, again, recognizing that the desire was to have future development to the east and to the north of the campus. Again, very conceptual, we have no plans, but the idea would be that we would pinwheel this structure to the south as another potential. Again, leveraging the platform that's already in place. The major mechanical electrical infrastructure has been put in the central plant to support this building, but that would be, again, conceptual plan. You could see that this is something that would be 2020 and beyond, because we haven't even thought it through. We have no demand for that at this point in time. But to be honest, you know, when we started this planning process, it was before Obamacare, and I guess when it's complete, it will be during Trump care. I don't know what to expect, because when you look to the south and we have the capacity, we want to make sure that we have a thoughtful plan of maybe advancing the research, education, or other ancillary things that make sense for our academic medical system, health system, but they're all conceptual. These would be, it's hard for me to say, but I just thought I'd be able to call out some future expansion. So really that concludes the update and the presentation. I think what we'd like to see through this process is we have no ask today, but really wanted to make sure that we had a chance to update everybody on what's been happening with the hospital. And I think that the desire would be that we started with the approved plan in 2012. We've learned a lot over the last 5 years. We've made the necessary changes. We also recognize that this is an ongoing process. We've worked with the city. We've heard feedback. We also have better sight lines, and as we continue to advance this project further, we'll continue to make refinements so that this is everything we all collectively hope. We greatly appreciate the support that we've been given from the community, from the Plan Commission, from City Council, and the city itself. The city has been a phenomenal partner in working with us closely. We've been really able to do this, advance this project in a way that's minimized disruption to our core patient care mission. And again, I'd just like to thank everybody for their help in getting us to this point.
Could you just remain at the podium for a moment?
Yes, sir.
I delayed a step that I should have taken earlier, and that is to swear you in for your testimony and anybody else who, during the public hearing on this matter, wishes to testify. Those of you who wish to testify, please stand. Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly declare and affirm the testimony that you've given or about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. At this point, Kathy, identification of issues by staff.
Thank you, Chairman Lay, members of the commission. As Mr. McAfee said, this is really a reintroduction. I believe 2 commissioners were on the commission and participated in the review of the approved master plan. The rest of you are new, so we thought this would be a good time, now that the hospital is clearly taking shape and moving forward, to, 1, familiarize all of you with the approved master plan. You received the approved master plan several weeks ago, so you had an opportunity to look through that. As we've talked on an ongoing basis with the hospital team, it really made sense to come forward now with a refinement and update to the master plan to reflect not only the as-built conditions that are taking shape on the campus, but also to look forward, at least in the near term. Just a brief review of master plans. The institutions throughout the community are governed by master plans. The city traditionally has not incorporated institutional zoning or governmental zoning or educational zoning into our code, but instead has allowed these properties to remain residential, and those uses are governed through special use permits. That allows the community to have input, to be informed when changes are taking place on these campuses, and by approving master plans, it gives the institution some certainty. Master plans do not mandate any particular building footprint, but master plans can establish some parameters. And what you see in the approved master plan, importantly, was a buffer all around the perimeter of the hospital campus. No changes proposed to that perimeter. In fact, as the hospital continues to build out, as the work on the campus continues to evolve, we'll continue to see enhancement as that landscaping grows in. There are some discussions about further enhancements to the perimeter areas, and I'm sure you'll hear a little bit about that as well. We have had conversations, comments from the neighbors on an ongoing basis. And again, it's that perimeter area. It's really thinking about how to continue to soften the impact of the hospital. Importantly, as part of the approved master plan, there was no intent to completely conceal the hospital. I think the Plan Commission and City Council understood that this is a large campus. It's a large building. Certainly views should be filtered, but it was understood that the hospital itself would not be completely hidden from view. This is before you tonight again for introduction, for information. We do expect this to be back on your agenda next month. I believe the date of your meeting is December 14th. At that time, the public hearing will be continued, and you'll be asked to consider taking action, if you're ready to do so, on some refinements to the plan, both on the center campus to reflect the existing build-out and to reflect some changes that are proposed in the near term. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Okay, any questions and requests for clarification from the commission to either the petitioner or staff?
Sir, I had a question. You mentioned the heights of the building. Can you walk us through that?
Let's see.
I mean, I can see on the master plan what's allowed, but I'm just curious to know by how much you beat it.
So I do know that the way the height was structured is that the current land use plan allows for a maximum height of, I believe, 45 feet in this portion of the central campus. Mm-hmm. And then it stepped up in the range of, Dave, do you remember? Is it 86 to somewhere in the range of?
Actually, 60 to 81. Right.
Okay.
Would you step up to the microphone?
Mike, please.
Thank you.
And identify yourself.
I'm sorry. My name's Dave Mikus. I'm president and CEO of Anderson Mikus Architects. And I wasn't sworn, by the way. I'm sorry. So you want to swear me?
Okay. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you see the document in there, and everything that we've been doing, we've been following the underlying goals of that document. And the existing building right now at that 3-story level with no mechanical system up there right now, I believe is around that 41, 42-foot number. So we're
Right.
well
I was just
below
looking
that.
for a general.
Yeah, that's it. And then, of course, it steps down, from there.
And thank you for that. And also, I should really have started by thanking you for the work on the building and the creative approach that you've taken to it. And I think the sensitivity to the communities. I wasn't on the commission, but I watched the meetings very closely. And the way in which you approach that and the sensitivity of the community around the height, I think you've set unfortunately, a bit of a, no pun intended, but a high bar for your next buildings as you move forward on the campus, because you really have managed that height very well. So, and also thank you, of course, to Northwestern and for the interest and the commitment and the investment in our community. Very much appreciate that as well. So with that standard set for the central portion of the campus, and one of the things I think we're going to be asked, Kathy, at the next meeting is, as it relates to the south campus, rerouting a traffic pattern. And can you, and maybe this is intended to be discussed next month, but I think many in the audience will be curious to know, with the proposed removal of buildings and rerouting of that roadway to the center of the south campus, what the long-term vision is for that.
So, Commissioner, it's to be honest, we haven't begun to even advance. It's been really at the macro level. I think that what you can see is bringing the traffic through the center spine so that it lines up and connects in a cohesive way, so that it restores a campus-like feel. The current road structures today bank hard to the right here and then go right up against Route 41, which is a little awkward from an optic standpoint because you're coming against oncoming traffic, and aesthetically it would limit our ability to ultimately, if we ever do look to evolve and add structures down here, the desire would be to push as far east, consistent with the request of the city and the community. So by bringing out the center spine, the connectivity makes good sense, and it also sets us up nicely for potential expansion. But we haven't advanced the road yet because we're not exactly certain what portions of the existing structure. We know that we don't need 380,000 square foot of 75-year-old hospital. The question is, which portion of the existing structure do we want to retain? We know Hunter's well placed. We also have occupants in those structures, so we have to adequately plan for those. So again, it'll be 2020 and beyond before we're really in a position to speak with clarity. I think what we'd like to make certain, though, we do is keep you updated on our best thinking, and also make certain that the plan reflects reality, because 5 years ago when we were at this stage, we couldn't speak with the level of clarity that we have today. We also want to make sure that we reassure the community on exactly what we've built, how it fit with the original plan, and making sure that it's updated with some level of detail so that when we do come forward, it fits within a plan that's been seen before.
Thank you.
Additional questions for petitioner or staff?
Would you please point out? Is that it? Would you please point out where the Hunter building is?
Sure. So Hunter today is right here. Sorry, a little shaky here. So the existing structure, the existing structure, I can't advance.
Is it the maternity and?
It's the Women's Center, right, exactly. Right.
Okay.
Okay.
That was the building that was built in 2004, before the new hospital was the most recent building on the campus.
Okay.
And that was built to contemporary standard.
Okay. Additional questions?
So if you were, was she done? So if you propose the new road up the middle, let's call it, leaving the option to develop to the east, closer to the highway, then that road would obviously be then truncated and removed, so to a certain
Correct.
extent up to near the pond. So you'd be removing the existing hospital or leaving that option open.
Correct.
So if you were to have the ability to develop to the east of the new road, would you then not be doing any more redevelopment to the west of the road?
I can't answer that yet because I'm not exactly certain what the needs will be for the institution at that point in time. But what I can tell you that we want to make certain that we've committed to having over 100 acres open, meaning no land, no parking lot. And we really do want to make this a destination for health and wellness, being that we want people to ride their bikes, we want people to be able to walk the walking trails, we want people to walk by the new water feature and around the detention pond, and having the old parking lots or structures placed as they currently configured obviously doesn't make sense. So removing those assets, aligning the road, restoring the landscape, an open vista and doing it in a way that's cohesive is first and foremost our priority. With respect to the planned evolution of the South Campus, to be honest, I think we'd first probably be looking to address some of these perimeter priorities from a timeline standpoint. So it's really difficult for us to be able to forecast with any accuracy what we do with the South at this stage.
I guess what I'm trying to do is just get a feel for, I wasn't involved in the initial plannings. I think one thing I did hear was that the existing historic building, the hospital, was probably going to be retrofitted for administrative purposes, and then it sounds like that's become something that just doesn't seem to work out in the long term, which is not necessarily the focus of my comment. But so now with the idea of putting a road up the middle, I'm just wondering if you do take down that structure, in one sense, the residential community to the west somewhat benefits, because then there's this removal of massing from their eastern,
Correct.
side yards and their skyscape, let's call it. And I was just wondering if you're thinking then now you have the option to double load it, then you're going to be increasing density on both sides of the new road. And I'm not trying to comment whether I think that's good or bad. I think as a plan commissioner, I just kind of want to get a feel, are these options that are going to be on the table in 5 years? And is it a good idea to talk about what we think of the impact now, rather than just kind of get fed something as we go along every couple of years? I was wondering if one were to remove the existing hospital and then it was going to be that area redeveloped, then would you build new structures right on that new setback line, and how was that going to be perceived with the community, the residential neighborhood right to the west?
Yeah, so the residential neighbors
Do you get my point?
Yeah,
I'm not
no,
trying
absolutely,
to be
absolutely.
overly
So-
critical. I just want to be thinking ahead here.
Let's see here. I can't. So the residential neighborhood is in this white section here, Lane Lorraine here. And a
Perhaps
few
maybe
roads.
when you come back next time, let's get bigger images, because they're almost impossible
Yeah,
to see.
you know
And I
what,
know
I
it's not
think-
your fault. Sometimes you need to come in before and do a dry run with your stuff. Maybe Kathy can help facilitate that, because I have full-size plans, so for me, I know
Right,
what I'm
right.
talking about, but.
Yeah, I think what the purpose of this visual was that it is the actual drawings from the land use plan, which is why it's scaled, but we certainly can make changes, and we'll note that when we come back. To your question, Commissioner, you can see the setback line here, which actually goes over some of the existing structures. So the setback that we've established as we move forward with the last plan in 2012 is actually a significant increase, which compared to what existed before. You have to remember that the existing hospital and its proximity to the community today is significantly closer to the neighbors than what will be proposed in the future. The other point that's worth noting is that we made a commitment that we would, once we add the center campus, we would not increase the density on the south more than what we have today. So in order for us to build anything on the southern campus, we had to decant some of the existing structures and able to support that. Being able to comply with the land coverage commitment that we made with an overall 65% open land ratio. So now with respect, again, this is, it's conceptual at this stage. We have no plans. Nothing would happen between now and 2020, even for the northern. So you're probably looking at, who knows, 2025 before we might be in a situation where we're looking to take down and advance anything else. I can tell you that Hunter is well placed from a structural standpoint, but we still haven't yet concluded on the reuse completely for that. So back to your question on administrative, we do know that some of the existing hospitals we've invested in 800 and 900 and 700. We've done some restoration. Hunter again is going to be something that once we remove any structure that's attached to it, we also have to make sure that that structure can stand on its own. So, for example, it doesn't have a loading dock or connecting linkages if you remove that. So the question is, do we anchor those to the north? Do we go to the east? That work hasn't even begun to be advanced. The other issue is that we have our our long-term care facility on the campus. We'd have to be able to accommodate that and go through a thoughtful planning process. Does it make sense for that to be integrated into Hunter? All of those concepts still have to be vetted, which will take us, quite some time to go through.
And you're referring to is that the,
Westmoreland?
that's the Westmoreland group?
Correct, which
To the south of
would
it.
sit, right up in this area here, in the center.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lloyd? No. Okay. Mr. McAfee, I just wanted to raise a question. We received a communication from the neighbor at 822 Lane Lorraine. Did you get a copy of that from Kathy? Did you provide that?
Yes, we do have a copy.
Is the issues that he's raising regarding the height of the berm, the lighting near the 800 and 900 buildings, and then the runoff water and drainage, are those yet to be addressed, and will they be addressed, and to assuage the concerns of the residents living?
Yeah, I was just recently made aware, and I know that the team, I've got members of the executive team and design team here. We absolutely take, feedback and have continued to do that from day one. We've worked with the city in personally touring the areas. I think that Kathy had mentioned that, perhaps there's opportunities for us to revisit. And we've also made a commitment, I think, for the next 5 years to consistently come back, look at the performance of the improvements we've made. Are there things that we can enhance or change? So, for example, I know that some of the concerns about when we took down the 700 building and added a parking area to support the 800 and 900 medical office building, that there have been lights installed, only a few, LED, low wattage, but it was clear that it could be seen by the end of Lane Lorraine, so the request was, can you put some supplemental landscaping in? And I think we've planted a half a dozen trees and a couple of pines, and we'll continue to look and revisit that. With respect to drainage, we've put an enormous investment in drainage. You have to remember that the hospital sits at a lower grade, so the drainage moves from west to east through the property, and in fact, through the enhancements of our drainage systems, we installed new drainage behind the 8-900 building, which would enhance that. We also know that the berms that have been put in place have been enhanced. They're actually higher than what was originally designed. So I think the answer is we'll look to those issues. We've constantly looked to tweak and improve, and we'll continue to do that throughout this process.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I just wanted to follow up. Commissioner Lay and I, accompanied by Kathy Cerniak, had the opportunity to review the hospital campus earlier this week with Tim St. Clair. So thank you very much. I found it very informative, not having been on the commission before. And one question that was mentioned was access to the emergency room, clear visibility, signage, distance from Waukegan Road and also from Deer Path. How would this potential new rerouting impact that?
So to orient the commission, the arrangement for access to the new hospital, this is the main entrance, which is on the opposite side of the round rotunda that you'll see from the east side. So this is the main entrance into the building. There's an entrance to the cancer center, which is right here, and then the emergency room entrance is on the southern side. So we also have the 800 and 900 buildings here, and then the berming here, actually here. The roadway, again, as we look to align in the future, is that there is a building, an outbuilding here today. So the idea would be that it sort of jogs and goes up against the 800-900 buildings. The idea would be to have this road swing out on a more natural curve. That would allow for parking to be adjacent to the 800 and 900 building on the east side. and also positioned so that anybody that is moving up to the north will have a straight shot into the emergency room. So it'll enhance the view for ambulances or patients or visitors that are coming to see the hospital with a straight shot. I think that one of the concerns that we've heard is that, is there a way for us to continue to enhance the berm in this area? Today, this is where we have a construction trailer and parking, which will be pulled back to comply with the commitments we've made with the plan. So we think that we could possibly look to, revisit the current condition in response to the letter there to see if we can continue to make that. But to be honest, it's really shouldn't be visible given the structures that exist here unless you're from an elevated point. I know we have some view angles that we could share at some future point too to make sure that that's the case.
Well, and along those lines, I was struck yesterday by the fact that at the end of the berm going west to east, to the rear of the construction building, that the berm, the height of that berm seemed to be at least, this is my estimate only, but 3 to 5 feet lower at the eastern edge of that end of that berm compared to on the west. And so that's why I was wondering, is there opportunity to raise that to assuage the concerns of the residents at 822?
Yeah, I think that we could certainly revisit that area. I do know that the planned schedule, when I had referenced that some of the landscaping improvements are ahead of schedule, that was an area where the berming associated with that portion of the campus actually wasn't even scheduled to be done. So it was actually advanced as a way to try to help that process along and really give people a sense of, okay, what does it really look like to have the berm in that area? And again, we'll revisit that and see if there's opportunities to enhance it. Again, we're also sensitive in not wanting to put too much of a barrier and change, go beyond what makes sense either, so that we don't create an unintended consequence.
Good.
But the answer is yeah.
Thank you.
We'll revisit.
Okay, if there are no further questions from the commissioners, I'd like to declare a public hearing open on this matter before us. And I'd like to invite comments from the public. We have some speaker lists, but once we get through those 4 individuals, if there are people in attendance who wish to speak who have not given us a request to speak, you will be able to address the commission. So each speaker will have up to 5 minutes to speak, and I would just suggest that if your comments have already been stated by another speaker, you can simply state your agreement with the previous comments. There's no need to repeat them. And also I request that you please be respectful of the other speakers and all points of view, and please refrain from clapping or criticizing other speakers. So the first person I'll call on is Catherine Duffy, 1102 Emmons Court, and following her will be Annette Champion.
I am here tonight as a representative from the Middle Fork Homeowners Association, which is right across from the hospital entrance on Waukegan Road. I attended the landscape meeting that the hospital presented last spring. Had some concerns about the fact that there was really no landscaping at the intersection of Waukegan and the hospital entrance, especially that southeast corner, where the northeast corner is landscaped by Lake Forest Place and lovely landscaping. The picture that we were shown at the meeting showed nothing at the intersection, prairie, and then deciduous trees at the hospital, which we know what deciduous trees look like in Illinois for most of the year. I have expressed this concern with the hospital and asked them to come and make the presentation to the neighborhood to see if anybody else was concerned, and we weren't able to arrange that. I spoke to our alderman, who said to speak to Kathy Cerniak. We had Kathy at a homeowners meeting. She was gracious enough to attend. And I would just like to put this to the Plan Commission, that when this is finalized and you're looking at that landscaping, will you please come to our entrance when we exit our neighborhood and look at the hospital and look at what you see. I understand they're not trying to hide this hospital, but would you just, when final plans are made, will you look at it from our vantage point and see what you see, and as you make your plans? Thank you.
Thank you. Following Ms. Champion will be Melissa Knorr.
Hi, my name is Annette Champion. I live at 793 Burton Drive, so I'm at the north end of Burton Drive. I'm a direct abutter with the hospital. And I received a notice of this meeting maybe 2 weeks ago, and I got 2 diagrams in the mail. They weren't very clear to me. I got a new package tonight just when I arrived. I know that there's going to be a more substantial meeting coming up in a couple of weeks. I'd like to ask that we get the materials ahead of time so that we can really give you some informed comments. Pertaining to the comments that you've heard so far from the hospital, I think they gave you an overview, a high-level picture. As an abutter, things aren't quite so rosy. We have a drainage problem, and that drainage problem is getting worse. There was significant flooding at the north end of Burton Drive on July 23rd. I called the city, and they came down and looked at it, but there wasn't much they could do about it. We have a problem with mosquitoes because of the increased water with the berms. And there are other issues as well, and that I'd like to address more systematically. But I think basically tonight I don't have a very good understanding of what's going on from the presentation. I can tell you what we're experiencing. We don't have the landscaping, we don't have the trees in our particular area that we're talked about. And so I'm looking forward to coming back in a couple of weeks and hopefully to be much more prepared to let you know sort of what's going on where we live and also how we think this plan is going to impact us going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and we welcome your continued attention to this and to give us your input. Following Ms. Knorr will be Arthur Miller.
I'm Melissa Knorr. I live at 910 Lane Lorraine. So if you look at page 15 on the document that was handed out today, our home is directly behind the small orange structure where the setback is indicated. So right here. And this is a new area. This is the first, coming in tonight, this is the first I've seen of this because like Annette said, this was not provided to us in the mailing. And I have a lot of questions with regard to that orange building as well as that entire gray section that has never appeared on the plans before. I believe in the presentation today that orange structure is what's going to be the facility grounds building that they talked about with lawnmowers and seeds. That's going to attract rodents to the area, and it's also going to be a visual, a noise nuisance every time they fire up those lawnmowers right behind our properties. While there's a berm, that doesn't provide an entire noise barrier. I'm also a little bit concerned that the facility grounds building will also have dumpsters. So again, with the information provided tonight, it's really unclear what's going to go on back there. And as we know, trash pickup often occurs around 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. It's noisy. If that's intended back there, we need to have further discussion. I would like to talk about the drainage issue because there was a berm in that area before the new one was built. It was a smaller berm. And there was a culvert halfway down that berm. And when the new berm was put in, that culvert was filled in. And water traveled from south to north into the cornfield that used to be there. When that culvert was filled in, the water now backs up at that halfway point. And that's causing a lot of the drainage issues that we're all having. The water cannot go north anymore as it used to travel, and it's sitting halfway. We did have Kathy and Sarah and another representative out, I believe it was late spring, while the leaves were still off of the trees. They were able to see the lighting issues that we're experiencing. They were able to feel the mushiness of some of the backyards, to observe the drainage issues that we're having. And I regret that the Plan Commission has not been able to observe that as well. I would hope that we could also get you to come and see the problems that we're experiencing with the changes that they've made. So I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Hello, my name is Arthur Miller. I'm a resident of 169 Wildwood Road in Lake Forest, and president of the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation. I'm here, it came to the attention of our members, from members, that there were people who were great supporters of the hospital, who I think all of us are, and support all the expansion of facilities and services that are being provided, but who pointed out to us that within the context of the normal flow of Lake Forest, there's usually a lot of continuity rather than building new, tearing down old, starting over completely. So we, specifically people wanted to protect the 1942 building, which obviously is 3/4 of a century old, but is, it has some iconic appearance to people. It's a thing that in the middle of town there represents what it is to be part of Lake Forest, which is historically of a particular character. Styles come and go. Classic style seems to come back in waves, just as modernism is up now. I predict very much that in another rhythm there will be more of an interest in postmodernism. And the hospital, I think, would regret having torn down the 1942 part of that building. It's adjacent to what they're calling the Hunter Wing, the women's building. And they were saying that there might be needs for places for supplies to be coming in and things. This building might offer some possibilities. We don't expect I don't think anyone expects that the hospital absorb all of the issues involved, but there may be people in town who would cooperate to help make it possible to keep that safe. We sent to all the households in Lake Forest our newsletter in the spring with a picture of the hospital on the front and with a list inside of several of the kinds of adaptive reuse of buildings that have been done in Lake Forest, going way back to over 100 years. So it's not something new. It's something we do routinely. It's part of the DNA here. No one wants to save that entire complex, but adjacent to the Hunter Pavilion, there is the L-shaped Stanley Anderson 1942 Anderson and Tickner building that was also, yes, recollecting the historic Westmoreland house that had been the A.B. Dick house that was near that property also. So I think that the possibilities of working together with people in the community who are very interested in this, some of whom have been big supporters of the hospital, and people unlike the Preservation Foundation, we ought to be able to, over the next 4 or 5 years, come up with some ideas that might work, that don't imply completely eliminating that interesting facade that you see there on that building, and the entrance with the sitting rooms and the octagonal hallway and things like that. That's kind of iconic for Lake Forest. So just keeping that idea in mind as something that that building doesn't, well, and if there isn't a requirement for a 65% open space, maybe historic preservation could be included in that category of open space for something like this, and make allowance so that the hospital isn't squeezed in what it actually can do. So thank you very much for your interest.
Thank you. Other people who wish to testify on this hospital-related public hearing, please just come on up, provide your name and address, and we'd be happy to hear from you. Okay. Seeing none at this point, like Kathy said, we're going to hold a public hearing open on this matter. And so that if there's some of you here who choose not to testify this evening, after having received the materials ahead of the meeting, as you suggest, you'll have ample opportunity at a future meeting, probably next month. Okay? Okay. Petitioner rebuttal, or Mr. McAfee, did you want to comment at all about what you heard during the public hearing?
No, I actually, I know myself and the team appreciate the feedback that we've received. We'll certainly have an opportunity to talk through that and investigate it a bit more. And as we move through this process with you, we'll look to respond accordingly. Thank you.
Good. Okay, final questions from the board to petitioner or staff, or to provide direction to petitioner and staff to provide additional information.
I have one for Mr. McAfee, if I may. Could you just update us at what is the status of Phase 1 landscaping? Is it complete, or is there still more to come?
There is still active plannings going on. So the berms that are along the western edge, the ones that run parallel with Waukegan Road, are largely complete. So they're growing in and they're actively being maintained. I think it's a 3-year plus cycle to get those to the full prairie grade. The parking lot and the lighting out in that temporary area is all temporary. In addition, we need to address that temporary structure, which is the area right across from Middle Fork Farm that doesn't enhance that area. So having the ability to address that issue is something that we will intend to do over the next 6 months. What we really want to make sure we do is make every effort to heal the campus, pull out so that we really minimize the disruption. We appreciate everybody's patience as we've worked through this process. We'd like to be able to complete that portion of the landscaping. I can tell you that the common, which is the area that is immediately outside of the main entrance, I don't know, probably 40, 50 trees at least have been installed in the last, or in the process of being installed right now. So that'll be continued to be enhanced and will soften the space. There is berming work that still needs to be redistributed, and some of that work will happen likely in the spring, since we're already into November.
Thank you.
Good.
Maybe I could direct this toward Kathy, if possible. Do you think it would be advisable to have someone from engineering go out and take a look at some of these culvert issues and drainage issues? Do we have members on staff that can actually address those?
We do, and engineering staff and the city arborist regularly walk this site. Obviously, the site continues to evolve, but engineering staff, along with the hospital team, has walked the top of the berm, has walked the south side of the berm, and as a follow-up to the questions raised tonight, we will have appropriate city staff available at your next meeting to respond to those issues.
Okay, so they can actually take a look at some of these specific areas where there is a concern for water backing up in certain rain cycles.
Yes, and they've been doing that on a regular basis.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Further comments? I would just have two final comments to the petitioner, and that is with respect to the current hospital. Before we even heard from Mr. Miller, which I think makes a very compelling case for saving at least a piece of the iconic 1942 building, I was struck by the fact that as having spent quite a bit of time in that part of the hospital during a hospital stay several years ago, it's just a wonderful respite area. And I'm sure you're going to have such things in the new hospital, but to the extent that a portion of that could be preserved, I think would really enhance the project. The other comment I would have is it was very powerful to see an aerial view of the mock-up of the current hospital. And that is, it's a building that has, after 1942, appeared to me that it had been added on 6 or 7 different times. And so the aerial view of that diorama really hit home to me the fact that that building has probably outlived its useful life. And so I don't have a major issue with what you suggest for that building, but I would hope that we're able to keep a historic portion of that in some way, shape, or form, working with the community if at all possible.
Chairman Lay, I agree with you. This is our history. We've been in the community for actually 115 years, starting in East Lake Forest. The building has evolved, as you had mentioned, with a series of attachments and is a bit circuitous in the way you navigate. We have something in the range of like 18 entrances throughout the campus that's less than optimal. Having said that, we absolutely want to take into consideration the history of this great institution and make sure that we're respectful as we move forward with this. And we will. And you know, again, Lake Forest Board are all Lake Foresters largely. They live in our community. They know what it means. We've been a cornerstone in the community. Having said that, we also want to make certain that the campus is designed in a way that advances the primary healing mission of our organization. And so the question is, what portions do make sense to retain, if any, that we haven't already talked about? And we're going through a very thoughtful exercise, but it's going to take us some time. I think I've been consistent in what I've been mentioning about the removal. I think it was a year or so ago when I was in front of City Council and I referenced that we would be raising portions of the campus. And I think it's important to communicate that because I don't want to give the impression that it makes any sense to hold on to that kind of scale on the campus. I don't think it's good for the community or the hospital in any regard because, again, it takes away from our commitment to opening up the space. We also know that by relieving the parking lots and taking the load off of the stormwater sewer system is an enhancement to the community. So there are other benefits that we know we're going to take into consideration, and we want to enjoy as much open land on the campus. But I can assure you that we'll absolutely take very serious the history of the existing hospital, see how we might want to reflect on that as we continue to develop the hospital campus in the future, and be thoughtful about what our options are. Because again, it's our history too. We are not treating this in a cavalier in any regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Kathy, did you have any response to the public testimony?
Only that we will take each of the issues that you raised, that members of the public raised. We will work with our city engineer, work with the hospital team, and bring you back answers to those and more details in areas as appropriate.
If any other ideas come to fruition between the next visit, it's all right if we contact Michael and have those forwarded to you and you can distribute those to the petitioner?
Certainly.
Okay. Since we're going to hold over the public hearing, I think a motion would be in order to continue the public hearing on this project and subject to the matter being brought back to us at our next, probably our December meeting, Kathy? Okay.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that this matter be continued to our December 14th meeting. Is there objection to that motion? Seeing none, motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. I'm going to keep it on part.
I do too.
Okay, do you want to recuse right now?
Yeah.
Do we need to state it again?
I've already recused.
Right. So why don't you just,
It's up to you.
why don't you just,
Okay,
you've already
very good.
announced your recusal. Sure.
Hey, Lloyd, can you ask them to close the door too? When you go? Thank you.
Okay, at the last meeting, we had two members of the commission recuse themselves, and I would like to have both of those members who will not be considering this matter, please clarify of their recusal.
Well, to restate, Gary Janko and the Janko Group has been a business client of mine. While I believe I can act impartially, there may be the perception of a potential conflict of interest. Therefore, I'm recusing myself from the 770 Wesley Road proposal so that the Plan Commission can avoid even the appearance of impropriety. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Culbertson?
Mr. Chairman, I reside in North Carroll Meadow, which is the subdivision immediately west and adjacent to the proposed subdivision, and I feel it will have a direct effect on my situation there and our neighborhood, so I will be recusing as well.
Thank you. You're excused. Okay, this matter is public hearing and action, consideration of request for a zone change from R5 to R4 and tentative approval of a 9-lot planned preservation subdivision and the associated special use permit for property located at 770 West Wesley Road. The owner is the Lake Forest Land Foundation, and the contract purchaser is Janko Group. So, John, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm John Centel.
Just a minute. Let me swear you guys in. For everyone who's going to appear on this one, please stand, and I'd like to swear you in. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
That's fine. Again, good evening, commissioners. I'm John Centel, and I'm president of Lake Forest Open Lands Association, and we're pleased to return this evening to formally propose for your consideration and recommended action a plan for Open Land's newest conservation development at 770 Wesley Road. We appreciated your preliminary feedback and questions last month, and we hope to respond to those questions this evening as we present a plan that we believe gives our community a unique, first-class residential development, along with the gift of a 7th public nature preserve for everyone to enjoy, the latter being a community asset secured entirely through contributions and without the use of public funding. As you know, Lake Forest Open Lands' mission has been and always will be to preserve our community's natural history and open spaces, not just for their beauty and their environmental value, but also to provide a meaningful, lasting connection to nature for everyone. Last week at our community meeting at Gorton, we watched an introduction to a marketing campaign that will help to promote the key features that makes our community such a wonderful place to live. Lake Forest Open Lands is undertaking this development, as it does with all its nature preserves, to create a natural setting that benefits all the citizens of Lake Forest. Our sole objective is to create a natural park that the citizens can enjoy to improve the quality of life in our outstanding community. As mentioned, last month, Open Lands purchased the 22-acre parcel on Wesley Road for its natural and its strategic value. Situated right across the street from our very first conservation development, this property contains significant natural resources, including wetlands, a stand of shagbark hickories, and a high-quality relic of a wet mesic prairie. As shown here, conserving the majority of this particular parcel is part of the puzzle for a bigger vision that Open Lands calls our Western Lakeshore, a connected and expanded greenway of preserved open spaces and interconnected trails in the central part of our community, totaling nearly 920 acres in entirety, all along the middle fork of the North Branch of the Chicago River. Open Lands has owned the 770 Wesley site in pink on your map since about 2008. I want to acknowledge that the part of the reason we are able to preserve so much of this site as open space is because of the generosity of the Dickinson family, who forgave a big part of the acquisition cost of this property. The proposal before you permanently preserves 17 of the 22-acre parcel to be forever owned and managed by Open Lands as a public nature preserve and directly linked to our popular West Skokie Nature Preserve right across the street. By selling a small portion of the land for controlled development, we plan to connect and extend these nature preserves with trails, potentially offering over 2.5 miles of hiking trails right in the center of Lake Forest for recreation, for vistas, and for quiet enjoyment. Open Lands believes that the proposed subdivision to allow development on 5 acres builds upon the successful conservation development approach that we've modeled throughout our community, including Middle Fork, Everett, and Melody Farm. This approach is what affords Open Lands the ability to preserve this open space forever at no cost to the taxpayers. Permanently preserving the highest quality contiguous portion of the parcel takes into account the natural and the critical hydrologic connection to the surrounding properties. Initially, we thought that it might be possible to sell the existing house and its yard, but after a decade of trying, we're persuaded that there is no market for a large, old house with no historic significance and a big price tag for renovation. We did not want to engage with buyers who wanted no restrictions on their future development aspirations and especially no guarantee of public benefit. We were pleased when the Janko Group emerged to present an innovative plan to produce a housing product that isn't available in the area and a site design that retains the bulk of the high-quality property for a public nature preserve. The proposed development will not only best preserve the existing quality natural areas, but is sensitive to the natural hydrology of the entire site, using natural storage for stormwater management and delivering a landscape design consistent with the surrounding landscape. There were questions last month about trail location, privacy, and the assurance that vistas can be enjoyed by all in the community. I want to emphasize that the goal of preserving the majority of this property is not only to protect the unique habitat, but to optimize public accessibility to the site with interlocking north-south trails that connect people to the landscape and its views, but with limited disturbance to the site. In terms of the trail location, upon request, we have met and spoken with several neighbors regarding the proposed access to a trail off the south side of Wesley Road. After walking the site, there was concurrence that using the existing crosswalk across Wesley Road was optimal in terms of safety, and also there are no real privacy concerns. Open Lands has also agreed to plant conifers along the southwestern boundary of the neighbor's yard to reinforce privacy from the proposed trail. In a meeting with neighbors on site, it was noted how the trails and the home locations will likely benefit from the hydrology of the site. The Commission also asked about the potential to optimize views of the preserved landscape for the public via a drive or vehicular access. Open Lands concurs with the desire to ensure a community connection to the vistas on the property. As with all our preserves, we use foot trails to allow for an intimate connection to nature and suggest that an interconnecting trail off Stable Lane, as shown here, will allow for the public to take advantage of the long views to the north with minimal impact. A vehicular road off Stable Lane would bisect valued habitat and wetlands, and in our judgment would impact the passive user experience we work so hard to create. To make the best use of the nature preserve, we take into account the best way to preserve and enhance the unique natural environment. The plan before you makes the least impact on the very important natural resources at 770. The map herein shows the key natural areas on the parcel and illustrates how the current plan minimizes impact to the site. Important to note is that this property holds a tremendous amount of water in its wetland and prairie complex, not only benefiting this site, but also helping to manage water for surrounding parcels. That is a valued natural infrastructure that we did not want to alter. Not only can nature do the best job of managing water on site, but maintaining the current hydrology is also linked to preserving the shoreline pond habitat to the north, the remnant hickory woodland to the southwest, and most importantly, the high-quality wet mesic prairie in the center and eastern portion of the land. This latter habitat is perhaps the most valued and is most deserving of protection. You'll note on the map how the wetlands, again shown in pink, finger throughout the site, and this helps to visually define why we received approval from the Army Corps of Engineers to place our development in the south-central location of the existing home and lawn area. In sum, this proposed conservation development and nature preserve benefits our community in many ways. It expands recreational open space in the center of our city, an asset for all residents in our community to enjoy, It extends the vision for a Western Greenway. It continues the success of conservation development goals by offering a unique residential product that meets the current market interest, a low-maintenance home at a lower density than allowed while in a nature-preserved setting. It maintains the green, rural nature of the Wesley Road corridor and protects the native habitat and natural hydrology of the site. It plans for a possible link to the Riley property and pond via foot trail in the future, and it creates a public amenity at no cost to the taxpayers and is a parcel that will forever be taken care of by Lake Forest Open Lands. As mentioned a moment ago, Open Lands' goal is to create a nature preserve that every resident can enjoy and to improve the quality of life where we live, work, and raise our families. We believe that the 770 Wesley Road development will translate to a wonderful recreation amenity for all our residents, providing an outlet to the broader community to enjoy the unexplored natural history of the Ridge Road area. Open Lands prides itself on being a good neighbor and is proud of the way our nature preserves add real value to our neighborhoods. We look forward to the successful completion of this development and the associated nature preserve, and we have further plans to enhance our community through additional amenities for our residents. Thank you for your consideration and for your input this evening. And now I'd like to introduce Jim Puritan of the Janko Group to present specifics on the subdivision proposal, its market potential, and the thinking behind the development design.
Thank you, John. As you can see from this aerial, the well-located and partially wooded 22-acre site is surrounded by single-family homes. The surrounding properties are all zoned R4, so it seems natural for this site to also be zoned R4. As we pointed out last time, under the R4 zoning, our site could have been subdivided into 10 lots consisting of no less than 60,000 square feet each, with homes of up to about 8,000 square feet. That traditional subdivision layout would have, however, essentially eliminated the site's existing significant connected natural resources as just outlined by John. As a result, once Open Lands became the owner of the property, the traditional subdivision was never a possibility for the site. Instead, the direction was always to find a solution to cluster the homes in a manner that preserves as much of the open space and natural resources as possible while providing a rural setting for the homeowners of the eventual subdivision. But where should the subdivision be located to maximize preservation of the most significant natural resources? There were three primary areas of significant natural resources that had to be considered. First, on the southeast edge, as John has just pointed out, has transitional wetlands and woodlands and connects to a corner of the rare mesic prairie remnant. While important, this area probably has the least significance of the three primary natural areas. Secondly, essentially, the northern half of the entire site contains wetlands under Federal Army Corps of Engineers jurisdiction, as well as most of the high-quality mesic prairie remnant. Third, in the southwest area, again, as John pointed out, that site has a large woodland area, including a rather significant stand of hickory, as well as creek drainage, as the engineer will show in just a bit. Creek drainage of the northern portion of the site and beyond basically goes through this western portion of the site. The only logical conclusion, if preservation of the site's natural areas and critical hydrology is a primary goal, is to develop clustered homes on smaller lots in the south central area of the property. Over the years, there have been many development plans prepared for this site. This slide shows a representative sample of the journey over the last few years. For the record, Site Plan 1 shows the aborted attempt, up here on the upper left, shows the aborted attempt to connect at least part of the subdivision to Stable Lane. This plan would require the filling and destruction of federally controlled wetlands and a portion of the rare mesic prairie. This plan was readily discarded for its destruction of the very important wetlands hydrology and the significant mesic prairie remnant destruction. I'm sure you'll agree that Lake Forest Open Lands would be a very unusual name on the application to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for a permit for the development that would destroy wetlands. Site plans 2 and 3 are the clustered development to the south central area of the site, some early plans that we investigated. This is the area, obviously, with the original state home, driveway, and lawn, which does maximize the preservation of the site's most significant natural resources and the critical hydrological connection to the surrounding land area. Site plan floor in the lower right, adjusted the lots, and following a meeting with our neighbor to the south, relocated the entranceway from the existing driveway, which is right here across from the driveway of the neighbor, some 300 feet to the west, across from open lands property, instead of directly across from the neighbor's driveway. As part of our plan, you'll hear Nick describe later, we intend to fill in the existing driveway with buffer planting. Site plan 4 is essentially the site plan in front of you today. A couple of additional comments that I mentioned in our prior presentation last month. The site is located in a very desirable and somewhat rural-feeling neighborhood. In addition to the east and west setbacks, which actually preserve natural areas, we also set back the development from Wesley Road by increasing really the required 50-yard setback under the R4 zoning by probably 50%, and providing a long-term green belt, which Nick will describe in a bit, permanent green belt under the ownership and long-term protection of open lands to enhance the secluded rustic feeling that appeals to our targeted buyer. This setback and green ribbon will also minimize the visual disturbance to our neighbors and passersby and maintain the current nature of Wesley Road. Next, our market analysis showed that there is a strong demand for a new product in Lake Forest, the age-targeted empty nester home, which is a smaller home on maintenance-free lot with a master bedroom on the first floor and additional bedrooms and rooms on the second floor for visitors and offices. We've tested floor plans on the lots, and depending on the lot, they will accommodate homes of up to 3,000 to 3,500 square feet. I believe our development actually is, in concept, is similar to several proposals that have already been before you. And I'm happy to say that we are encouraged by some informal inquiries about our proposed home lots that we've already received. Too early to get too excited about it, but 5 potential homeowners have come forward. Finally, we did examine the existing estate home on the site that was constructed in 1933. As John mentioned, it is in not particularly good shape and requires a great deal of money for renovation. But even more importantly to our conversation here today, Susan Benjamin concluded that the house and its surrounding property do not have sufficient historical significance or architectural value. The home has little artistic merit. As a result of Susan's study, we have decided to demolish the existing home and reuse and or salvage materials for the development, including limestone landscape walls and some of the home's brick to be crushed for granular fill. The result of this thought process that I've described is the proposal before you today. A high-end, environmentally friendly, maintenance-free, age-targeted community that will preserve unique natural resources in the character found in the area while providing quality living in the Lake Forest tradition. Now for more details on the site development plans, here's Joy Corona from Bleck Engineering.
Good evening. I'd like to expand upon some information I provided at the previous meeting. So as you recall, there is this, and as John and Jim described, there's a significant amount of hydrology that feeds the site, primarily flowing into the Riley Pond to the north, and then there's lateral flow to those wetland areas that are high quality due to the runoff from the contributing watershed, which is depicted on this figure. The majority of the watershed actually flows to the wetland area along the west property line that was described already today. Oh, I apologize. The large flow pattern here actually goes off to the west and into the Middle Fork. There is a portion of the property, this 5 acres of the property, that flows south under Wesley. And at some point, under very extreme events, these are going to commingle. But for all intents and purposes, the majority of this flow path does continue this way, and this portion of the site, in addition to runoff from Stable Lane over here, will go to the south. So as described, maintaining the hydrology for the wetlands that are here is key, and this subdivision was placed in this location in that 5-acre area to preserve the features described and really tries to contain runoff from the development on site and bring it naturally through to the existing detention ponds that are designed to be natural and have wetland features to coexist with the development, which I believe Nick will describe again in the future. Taking into consideration some comments at the last meeting, I'd like to, address one of the comments that was made that, the 5 acres really kind of split here. About 2 acres of this site previously flowed to the west, this drainage way, which will now be picked up and directed into the detention facilities and be directed to the south. So that's alleviating a couple acres off an area that has expressed drainage concerns. Turning over to Nick.
Thank you. I think we're getting close. I can hear the beeper going, so I'm going to move through and we can answer questions. But the subdivision plans and some of the comments that we had received in our earlier meeting remains as a 22-acre parcel. 5 of the 22 will be the subdivision portion. The extraordinary part of this is that we have 77% of the 17 acres remaining as open space. The intriguing part of this is that the 5-acre part of the property is framed within open space. One of the comments that we had gotten asked about connecting Stable Lane. No, we don't want to bisect the wetland area. What happened if we move this away from all the boundaries? We would have a far less significant and dramatic open space. I think this is very much in keeping with the drama and the intent of the historic residential open spaces to create this balance of how do we look at a piece of land development and make sure that we're compatible with the neighbors, compatible with the environmental and native or natural systems, and the preservation of a buffer along this south boundary line exceeds what would otherwise be allowed in the R4 or R5. I'm about a 70-foot distance from the property line, not including another 20 feet from the road before I'm even having a first house. This hedgerow buffer, this dark green, spongy looking, is existing along Wesley Road. We would still have a rear yard area before we have the coordinated landscape that surrounds the cluster development that's internal to this. I think you understand the road network allows for an ease of circulation to access a group of 3 homes and another group of 5 or 6 homes on the eastern side. The Hickory Grove that it was mentioned earlier is majority of that is intact, and then the prairie areas to the north and to the east are still left intact. As we go through, one of the things I think that's important to remember, this is the neighbor driveway and the present driveway. This will be filled in with new landscape. The columns and the tree line buffer will be continuous through out the Wesley Road, so that the approach from this driveway will essentially be looking at a tree line through here. No mailbox, no columns. What we have done is moved the in the far distance, you can see that brick driveway. I heard the beeper, thank you. But the Dickinson and the Open Lands driveway is located here. The brick driveway is here. We're moving our access point down about 250 feet further west, and what it's doing is looking into open lands. So headlights and traffic circulation are much farther away. I think that's important. So the combination of filling in that buffer area and also moving the road have been respectful of comments that we've gotten from the neighbors. This slide is depicting a coordinated landscape that will be included in as part of the home package, as well as the maintenance of that. So I don't have individual homeowners coming up with their own individual landscapes or having their own individual landscape contractors coming. It'll be coordinated just as the same as the architecture itself. Some of the things that we're looking forward to seeing are the reuse of the existing limestone walls. Some of the native landscape will be a seamless integration with the remaining 17 acres of the property. and the stormwater management in working in as part of a aquatic type stormwater basin similar to what you might see over at Municipal Services Building is kind of the spirit and the character of this rural nature. I think with this, I look forward to answering questions and leave this slide up for reference. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you.
I know we went over the time limit.
Did you have anyone else as far as your presentation?
No.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay, Kathy, issues, staff?
Thank you, Chairman Lay, members of the commission. This item is before you for two separate actions. There's a request for a zone change before you. This property is zoned R5. R5 traditionally has been considered a holding zone in the community, except for areas at the very perimeter of the city. This property is surrounded by other properties zoned and developed consistent with the R4 zoning district. The minimum lot size in the R4 district is about 1.5 acres, 60,000 square feet. In your staff report, the standards for consideration of a zone change are reviewed. I won't go over those in detail, but in considering a zone change, the commission is required to look at whether that requested change is consistent with the zoning in the area and the development that has occurred and would be permitted in the future. And in this case, the R4 zoning is consistent with those standards. This property remained R5 because it remained in the ownership of the Dickinson family for many decades, and no development was proposed. Staff is recommending approval of the zone change from R5 to R4. You also have before you a request for approval of a tentative plat of subdivision. This property is in the Historic Residential and Open Space Preservation Overlay District. That district encourages the commission and the city council to be flexible with respect to the zoning requirements. That district encourages preservation of natural resources, and in order to do that, allows flexibility in lot sizes, in setbacks, in road configurations. We do have several successful examples of conservation subdivisions, planned preservation subdivisions in the community. Middle Fork Farm, Everett Farm are two examples. The concept of providing smaller lots is consistent with what we hear from many in the community, that Lake Forest has a sufficient supply of 1.5 acre lots, so providing a different type of product is something that the Plan Commission has endorsed in recent approvals. The tentative phase of the subdivision is required by the code and really gives an indication to the developer that the density, the overall configuration, the preliminary engineering, the road layout is all acceptable to the city, and it really authorizes the developer to go forward, spend additional time and money preparing the final engineering plans. The preliminary engineering plans have been reviewed by our city engineer, Dan Strand. He is with us tonight. If you have questions directly for him, he's available to answer those. So if you choose to do so tonight, it would be appropriate to forward two recommendations to the City Council, one in support of rezoning from R5 to R4, and the second in support of tentative approval of the subdivision plat. This would come back before the Plan Commission during the final phase of consideration. Tentative approval is good for a period of 12 months. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Time now for questions and requests for clarification from commissioners to either petitioner or staff. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman Lay. Kathy, question for you. The city's comprehensive plan, one of the requirements that we're supposed to consider in new growth areas is that consistent with the overall character of the surrounding areas, one of the factors to consider with these residential developments. There's also incorporate conservation areas around the perimeter of the proposed development, and then there's a number of others. But focusing on that one about conservation areas around the perimeter of the proposed development, is there any further direction for the commission on in the city's comprehensive plan as to what that means?
I I don't know that there's any further direction in the comprehensive plan, but I did fail to mention that included in the staff report are a number of recommended conditions prepared by city staff. One of those conditions does recommend that a conservation easement be identified on the final plat of subdivision that would extend along the Wesley Road frontage. Conservation easements are defined in our zoning code. Conservation easements allow for removal of non-native vegetation with city approval as long as a replanting plan is submitted. The intent with conservation easements is to retain over time the density, the high canopy, the low canopy, the overall character of vegetation in that area. In this case, Wesley Road is heavily wooded, and the intent would be to retain that natural appearing wooded streetscape. So that conservation is recommended as a condition. And I will also mention that in the staff recommendations, a landscape buffer is also recommended to the west of the trail, in the area where it comes closest to the first home in North Carroll Meadow. And that really is in direct response to some communications Lake Forest Open Lands and the developer have had with that neighbor to assure that the privacy of that home is protected at the point where the trail does approach the closest to a residential home, an existing residential home.
I did see that in the recommendations there, and although it did define it as running across the entire length of the Wesley Road portion of the property, there's no further definition as to what size that buffer should be.
Between tentative and final review, we would look at that. I believe the distance as currently proposed, as currently reflected on the plan between the property, the overall property line and the closest property line of, I believe, lots 8 and 9 is about 30 feet. And maybe someone can correct me.
The area at this location, it gets as close as 43, and then there's another 30 foot of rear yard setback before we can place a home. So combined about 73 feet from the property boundary line at this location. That's the closest it gets. And then as it goes around, that buffer increases, in its framework going around. This is essentially open space as one of the outlots for stormwater, open space for outlot for stormwater. And this was the buffer enhancement that we were talking about relative to screening some of the neighbors to the west of us.
But just to clarify, the staff recommendation is that the conservation easement would be on the, not on the individual lots, but would be on, I believe you said that distance is about 40 feet, so there could be a conservation easement that extended the length of the Wesley Road frontage on the property that would remain in the ownership of Lake Forest Open Lands. And,
right, understood. Right. And, okay, so thank you, Kathy. Nick, can you stay where you are for a minute? So can you go to the one, Nick, where it showed us, first of all, I think this is exactly the kind of use that this kind of property, I mean, this design, this use of the residential and open space preservation overlay district, I think is a really smart choice here. There's a lot of wetland, and it really, I understand the concept, and I think it is a perfect use of that overlay district. But I have a few questions. So on the overlay district itself, we start with this idea of how many acre-and-a-half homes, assuming we agree that it should be R4 as opposed to R5, because that's a first step we have to take. But assuming we agree that it's R4, you have a slide that shows how many acre-and-a-half lots consistent with an R4 zoning could fit on the, can you show us that one? Sorry?
10 lots.
10.
That's a 10-lot R4, 60,000 square foot configuration.
So what I'd like you to do, if you could, is let's just look at lot 10. Assuming that this were a traditional R4 zoning setup, what would the lot line and where the house could be placed?
Right.
Let's just say under current ordinance, what would the distance be from Wesley Road on a traditional R4 view as depicted here?
Thank you. Great question, and I can I can show you on here and then also flip back for reference. But the distance that you would have to have from Wesley in order to make Lot 10 or Lot 1 work, first of all, the lot would have to be 150-foot width. That's ordinance standards. Out of that, you have 50 feet that you would have to stay off of Wesley Road, 50-foot setback, before you would have then the buildable envelope area begin for the home. If I may, the comparable on this is to look at that same area and the 50-foot offset line. Remember, I was saying there's about 43 feet. The 50-foot offset line would be somewhere in this 30-foot landscape buffer. So we're a total of 73 feet, comparable to the R4 that would be 50. So we're in excess of what you would otherwise have with the conventional R4 historic residential open space layout.
So under this configuration, how far would the setback be from the lot line to where the house could be built?
I'll do this again. This is the right-of-way line.
Yep.
Property boundary. And I'm doing some addition here, but I've got 43 feet plus 30 is my 73 feet.
Right, I understand, but I'm trying to figure out more specifically, Nick, how, when we think about what that conservation area should be along Wesley, do we pick 35, do we pick 40? And the way I'm trying to get to that is, based on your lot lines here, how far from the lot line does the house have to be in this configuration? Or there's really none, because this is under the historic overlay district. You can kind of design these.
No, we've set this, and what you're seeing here is that if I'm a buyer of Lot 8, that's my backyard lot line.
Right.
But I have from that backyard lot line 30 feet inset as a building envelope area that I have to contain my house and any of the, vertical construction within that.
That's what I was trying to get at. Is so from the lot lines that you've developed there, the closest the home could be placed on that lot to that lot line that is the furthest south would be 30 feet from that southern lot line.
Right.
Okay.
What you're seeing here is a 15-foot drainage easement that we're going to have more or less like a bioswale type run of water coming from the house. There's 15 plus another 15. That's the 30 total before you have vertical construction.
Okay.
And
great.
that is a specific building envelope. It will have not conventional, but it will have side yard, front yard, and rear yard specific to each one of those 9 lots. It's not just arbitrary.
And then can you take us to this kind of colorful watercolor paint kind of thing, high quality habitats? So it looks like, given where the lots are placed now, there'll be some loss of the remnant wet mesic prairie, the southern portion of it. You'll lose a significant amount of that wet transitional woodland. Explain we were shown a couple of different plans, and I don't know, Nick, if you were involved in these or not, but we were shown like 3 or 4 different examples.
These?
Yeah, so there was concern raised at the last meeting when this project was introduced about whether or not access could be arranged off of Stable. And I'm also mindful of the fact that the commission and ultimately the city council has already approved development just to the east of there as it relates to the Riley property.
Just a little history here. Stable Lane North was created actually as a adjunct to the Riley property. That was part of the entire Riley property that Girardi developed. At the time that was created, a public right-of-way that began, I'm pointing to a Wesley Road here, but Stable Lane comes up. That's the bulb of Stable Lane, and then there's the 3 lots that are to the east of it. I don't know that there was thinking at the time of what the natural features and the character of the then Dickinson property was when the Riley Girardi development came in. So I think that there was, you know, some forethought that could have been given to say, you know, should there have been a different configuration, perhaps, but this is kind of an existing condition.
Right.
And then this particular plan was trying to tag on to that's the Stable Lane cul-de-sac. This little point here is a part of the Riley property to the north. That's the Riley Pond. This was the idea of having so many lots kind of tagging on that both Jim and John had defined as being one of the more highly sensitive and federally regulated wetland areas that, you know, came back and said, you really can't do this.
Well, and that's what I want to get to. So I understand the history and I appreciate that. But where it stands now, Stable Lane is where it is, and we have that cul-de-sac kind of feature there. The Riley property has received approval, whether it's moving forward or not, but it has received approval to build out in that area to the east. So help me, what I'm trying to get to is to help understand, we see what's going to be removed to make room for the site plan that you've offered. I'd like to better understand what's going to be, what would be removed, or why Plan 1 was rejected, because it does seem to address some of the concerns that neighbors and residents raised at the last hearing. So I'm just looking to be educated as to what is it about those areas, those
I wasn't
habitats?
directly involved with Plan 1. The configuration there was vetoed. Jim's word was aborted because of jurisdictional limitations. The Army Corps would not allow that to happen in this vicinity. So what you were looking at was a tag-on piece with a flag cul-de-sac coming into here and basically occupying the wet sedge meadow habitat at that location, and it was basically denied.
It was denied by the Army Corps?
Because of the impact and bisecting the, oh, sorry.
Okay. Well, that's very helpful, because I heard it was, that it was rejected, but I didn't understand that it was rejected by the Army Corps, so.
Because I wasn't directly involved, I don't want to be quoted direct. If somebody else has other terms.
Yeah, it would be helpful to know for the record that that's the case.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
He and Associates is the wetland consultant, but per wetland regulations, different wetlands are more protected and more valuable and are more difficult to get permits to impact. And so the wetland areas, which don't encompass the entire brown area in the wet transitional woodland, are of low quality. So obtaining a permit for impact is going to be at a lower mitigation ratio and is much more palatable to the regulatory agencies, whether it's SMC or the Army Corps of Engineers. Once you start getting into high quality areas, the mitigation ratios exceptionally increase. The permitting requirements are much more stringent to justify, so you have to go through an avoidance and minimization and really justify that you have no other alternatives in order to obtain a permit for that fill. In this situation, they aren't able to demonstrate that you can meet the avoidance and minimization because there's other alternatives available. So they're not going to be able to issue a permit for impacting those higher quality areas.
That's very helpful, Joy. Could you just then, by color, walk me through, for my own education, what the higher level wetlands are on this property?
So that's going to be the purple and green areas.
Okay.
And then they're going to have a wider buffer required from them as well. So you're looking at a 100-foot buffer, which is going to also be planted, which it would be anyway with being open lands project. But for general development, it would be a 100-foot buffer beyond the wetland limit that would need to be preserved and planted with other appropriate native vegetation. Whereas a low-quality wetland may only have a 15 or 30-foot.
Got it. So the wet transitional is low quality.
Correct.
Between the two, the remnant and the restored wet sedge, what, just in case this ever comes up again, Joy, I want to be, you know.
Yep, please.
Can you prioritize those for me?
I think they're equal. I think they're just different species, but they're equal in significance. And John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but.
Yeah, so
Oh, they want you to come up.
Yeah, sorry.
Joy, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that the wetlands to the north, the higher quality wetlands would be called waters of the United States. The lower wetland are what we'd call regional wetlands, and they can be mitigated with pocket wetlands, is how I describe them. And they will be mitigated on site. We will take those wetlands and we will enhance other areas, and that's part of the approval process to do so.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Sure.
That's all I have.
Okay. Further questions?
So from what I've heard, it sounds like is about half of this property then almost non-buildable? If it's sounds like the Army Corps of Engineers isn't going to let you build on it, then it sounds like you can't build on it.
Well, a large portion of the
John?
From open land standpoint, it's a high-quality habitat, but let's set that aside and let's talk about the wetland component. In terms of wetlands, a large portion of the property has either regional wetlands or waters of the United States, which are very difficult to build upon, and it would negatively impact the entire hydrology of the site. That area to the north contributes a great deal to how the water flow, and Joy, fill in, it contributes a lot to how the water flow naturally flows over the site versus the area to the south. So when you start to, not only is it costly, not only is it bad for the habitat that everything depends upon, even the remnant hickory prairie depends on how the water flow goes on that site. It also would create problems when you're considering the holistic view of what might happen to the north and to the east on that site.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason I asked that is that with the one exhibit that shows the whole site divided up into 10 lots, that's kind of the premise for your argument that you should be able to build 9 or 10 lots. And if you really can't build that many lots, is the density then maybe not so well-founded in your plan that you're presenting tonight? I'm just,
well,
I'm all in with this
yeah.
conservation, and we've approved at least one in the last year, I think, or year and a half on Oak Knoll, where it was at the end of a residential area that was, I think, R5. But because it wasn't on the way to something else, it wasn't a destination, so it seemed to really be a good fit to let this sort of arrangement occur there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm all in on that approach for, for all the reasons you state, but I'm just wondering if you're assuming that you can actually build 10, can you really build 10?
Well,
do you see my logic?
I do see your logic, yes, but you could build 10. It would be complicated to do so, and it would be highly detrimental to the value of the site to do so.
Very expensive.
And expensive as well, yes. And it creates different buffers, it creates different homes, that kind of thing. So it might require bridges over areas and that sort of thing.
It's just one. May I ask?
Go ahead, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm sorry to jump back in, but I thought we had said for the record that the Army Corps had rejected the concept of building on the northeast section of this property.
That's correct. They've not approved
Plan
it.
1.
They did not approve it. That's correct.
So how would you get that approved, to Commissioner Berg's point, as to lots 6 and 7, and for that matter, lots 4 and 5, as far as I can tell? They seem to be of the same quality of wetland. So Commissioner Berg kind of went to where I was going to go in my discussion section, but while we're here, I'm just confused now as to what we were told earlier.
Mitigation that occurs within the subdivision.
But it sounds like the cost of mitigation, Chairman, would be so high that the property, it would be impossible. Well, first of all, I don't know that you, according to the Army Corps, to what we heard, it can't be mitigated because they rejected it. Unless I'm misunderstanding that.
Maybe I can help. Oh, I want to be scrolling. Let's scroll all the way to the end of that lot 10. Okay, so the color-coded exhibit is visual, and it includes the buffer areas associated with those. But what I want to point out is something I think we're missing. This hatched area is actually the official wetland boundaries and not the habitat. So there's a wetland boundary which has to meet 3 different characteristics. It has to have hydrology, it has to have vegetation, it has to have soil. So the location of the edge of the wetlands and waters of the U.S. that meet those criteria are the hatched boundaries. The schematic for visual purposes extends beyond this because it has the habitat and the vegetation, but it doesn't meet the actual definition of the wetland boundary. So when you're going to the Corps to get a permit, they're basing it on the hatched boundaries that are depicted here and not the more colorful exhibit that we looked at before. So, you know, it's not that the entire northern area is unbuildable. It would flow more with this location. And so, does that help clarify part of the issue where it's not that the whole northern part is under Corps jurisdiction that said that you can't build on any of it? On each of these lots, and that's part of that demonstration that you meet the conventional R4, we had to demonstrate that there was a buildable envelope on each of these lots.
Does the hatched area also include the boundary area that you also explained to me that extends beyond the actual wetland itself?
I think this is just the wetland, and I didn't make this exhibit, but that would just include. Now, there are allowances for doing wetland buffer averaging and building a certain portion of impervious surface. I mean, there's a lot of regulations to try to work with buffers and impacts and provide mitigation, but those are a lot of uphill battles, but they can all be done if you want to spend the time and money to do so.
Right. It would have to be cost justified by the sales price.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
But it's feasible. It's just not palatable and enjoyable.
And I can offer that the plan preservation provisions in the code do not require that wetlands be excluded. They really look at the overall acreage of the site, look at generally how a plan could lay out to try and determine overall density. So it is not necessarily meant to say that this conventional plan as presented could be built exactly like that.
But in fairness, it's not real specific as to one direction or the other, is it? I mean, we could look at that. The concept is that you take what would otherwise be R4, and then from that density you build forward, right? I mean, there's nothing in that says you should include wetlands in it either.
No,
or
but it
unbuildable
speaks
property,
to
or, in other
acreage and being able to fit the minimum lot size and appropriate access.
Okay.
Okay, further questions?
I really only have one question, and that goes to the setback from Wesley Road. And I was wondering if you did any type of survey of the adjoining properties to see basically how far away those homes were set back from Wesley?
There was some attention paid to that to the east. There are a couple of homes, there's 3 homes to the east, still on the north side. And Jim, I'm doing this from memory. Did we, one or two of them were closer? And I don't have those at hand in an exhibit form. We're trying to say that we kind of have a balance. Jim?
We did an informal Google survey, aerial, and it's from edge of the road, which if you need to add another 20 feet to his 75 feet. So we're somewhere in the 90 to 100 foot range from the road. I found 3 homes going east and west a distance, 3 homes that were 80 feet from the edge of the pavement.
Keep going.
And then I kind of said, well, what's the median? Obviously, there's one that's 300 feet, but the median tends to be about 100 feet.
Okay.
So our 90 to 100 feet is pretty much on the median.
So the concept is when one is traveling down Wesley Road, this new subdivision will tend to fade into the background as some of these other homes are. You're trying to kind of keep a commonality with the massing away from the street?
Correct, yeah. Our setback from the actual street edge will be very comparable. What's missing on a lot of those other, once you get west of Wallace and east a little farther, past Table Lane, you don't have the 50-foot green belt, if you will.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I have one question. John, explain to the commission the steps that you went through and the results you received from discussions with neighbors from the beginning of your concept for this property to the point till tonight. What steps did you go through to explain the projects to them, and what kind of feedback and comments did you get? Could you share that with us, please?
Sure. So either Lake Forest Open Lands or Janko has met with every neighbor in the area. There's one neighbor we're still trying to get off of a stable lane, and it's just that we haven't been able to touch base with them. The neighbor across the street, I think our first conversations with him were probably a year and a half ago. And then recently, before the last Plan Commission meeting, I believe Janko met with that gentleman before the first Plan Commission meeting. We incorporated comments, and we've always been open to talking about those things. The other neighbors that are in the periphery, down Stable Lane, a couple of homes up onto Wallace, we've communicated with them. So we've tried to communicate with neighbors and get feedback from them as much as possible.
So what proportion of the neighbors around, did you meet with, either you or Mr. Janko meet with one-on-one?
Me personally, I've met with 1, 2, 3, 4 neighbors. I can't answer how many Janko's met with, but I know they've met with some as well, that I was not part of those meetings.
Okay. So there's only one neighbor with whom you weren't able to arrange sit down?
Right. Okay. So there's only one neighbor that has had concerns with the development that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I will expound just briefly. The Webbs are out of town, and I believe that they live directly adjacent to the west of the property, and I have arranged a meeting already with them. They're unable to be here tonight. I know they're traveling. That I'm meeting with them on Friday for them to, again, walk me through and reiterate their drainage complaints or concerns to ensure that, we can take those into consideration. So there's another one upcoming with the Webbs.
And I did meet with Mrs. Webb with a number of people, and we talked about the drainage concerns. We also talked about the buffering, and that's why we walked the potential trail with her. We walked the streetscape. She understood, she was comfortable with it. I spoke with Mr. Culbertson over the phone about our meeting with the Webbs, and I think he was satisfied with the conversation at that point in time, because we want to be very sensitive to Mrs. Webb's concerns.
Is there any of those neighbors who have requested a meeting, either as a follow-up or whatever, that you haven't been able to meet with?
There is one neighbor on Stable Lane that we've reached out to them and said we'd like to meet with them, and they've said they'd be happy to meet with us. It's just we've not been able to arrange the meeting, but I don't think that they are concerned necessarily.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, seeing no further comments or questions, we'll move to the public hearing. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 people who've expressed an interest to speak, and I think we've sworn in more people than that. So if you haven't provided a request to speak slip, you'll have your opportunity. But we'll first call on Paul Hammond, 511 Beverly. And he'll be followed by Arthur Miller.
Paul Hammond, 511 Beverly, 58-year resident of Lake Forest. If you read the Lake Forest Open Land Mission Statement, it indicates that Lake Forest Open Lands Association is devoted to the acquisition of land. The mission statement does not indicate that it is a development company that buys land and waits a few years and then sells that land for homes. My neighbors who have given money to Lake Forest Open Lands did not intend their money to be used to help development companies build out Lake Forest. Most of my neighbors believe that Lake Forest Open Lands is disingenuous by fundraising for preservation, by using that money secretly for development. I'm sure when the city gave Open Land 60-plus acres on the lake recently, the Lake Forest residents accepted that decision because of the mission statement indicating that Lake Forest Open Lands is devoted to the acquisition of land. I would table this request because the mission statement does not allow for the development of Lake Forest Open Lands for homes. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Miller? Will be followed by Dan Sebald.
Arthur Miller, 169 Wildwood Road, and speaking for the Preservation Foundation. We followed this house, have been involved in providing information about it over the years and the ideas of developing it. I think that our group supports the demolition of the house and the new development of it. And I think we can do that without maybe going quite as far as Susan Benjamin has in saying that it's not important. I think it's in conversation with a very fancy house across the street. I would say formal, I guess is a better way. Classic house, which is almost a stage set because it actually declines from the second story down. It's just kind of a facade. It's kind of an interesting house, but it has a very big presence on there. This is a recessive house. It's very unassuming. It fits in beside it. I don't know if I've seen a reference to the landscape architect for this land. If that's known, I haven't heard it. But it's characteristic. It's around 1935, I think, or in the 30s. Characteristic of Simons West and Blair, which was a successor firm to the old O.C. Simons, who had been active earlier. But Earl Blair did designs for Ryerson Woods, which is a very naturalistic one. But my point would be here that if you look at that, that's kind of probably made to look very natural, that southern part that we're talking about developing now. And even though there's the woodlands on the eastern part of it, I think that was probably, that the roadway and everything was sort of set by him. He set that up, and but to make it look like it happened naturally, that was his art. He did that in a few places in western Lake Forest. It'd be typical. This house was unassuming. Mr. Yeager was married to a Douglas. Douglas was part of the big Quaker Oats, Douglas, Stewart clan that was in Cedar Rapids and Lake Forest, Chicago. So I think they might have been trying to be understated here. And the purpose of this house and this landscape, which was very informal, was to be kind of a counter to the very formal house across the street. So without saying, I think we can say it's fine to demolish the house without saying that it had no significance. That's a subtle point, but I think it's used up now and it can go on. But I think that this development is right in the right place and is very carefully fixed. Other thing I would say is that pond, I think, is a kettle pond or lake, post-glacial. These are like Walden Pond in Massachusetts, but I wonder how many of them are still kind of protected around in this so far close to the lake, up and down the North Shore in Illinois. It's probably pretty rare to not have any houses around it. I don't see any development around that thing at all right now. So I hope Open Lands thinks about what they can do about that Riley property that's north, too, to develop that so that could be protected also. Because I think one of the great things about this is it may be a very rare protected kettle lake that's of a type. There's a book called Beyond Walden that talks about this type of lakes. Came out maybe 7 or 8 years ago. So I think what we're doing here makes good sense to the Preservation Foundation in terms of the house. It's honoring the idea of the original landscape plan that was down at the south end of that, and it is protecting all that important landscape above it. I think that there has been a long precedent with Open Lands doing this sort of property management, acquiring property, but then being able to then just develop part of it and save the important parts as open land. That's been going on since Derwin Marr across from Deer Path School. That was in the early 80s, so that would be over 30 years ago. So very soon after Open Lands opened, they started doing this sort of thing. So I think the broad swath of the community accepts this and understands the development. And we've participated with the Preservation Foundation participated with the Open Lands on these things over the years, and we think it's a good strategy for keeping open space and having well-planned housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sabalt, and then followed by Lloyd Culbertson.
Dan Sebald, 560 Ivy Court. As you might guess, I oppose this development and rezoning, which is consistent with several times I've appeared here over the years regarding this land. I'm going to go through and make comments. I'm reading in here that, okay, so generally I oppose this because it'll change the character of Wesley Road. The road in particular with the rather wide entryway, and in this diagram, which is not consistent with another diagram, there's a split at the entryway which is it's like a decoration more than natural. And there's been good discussion about wetlands, the importance of wetlands, and because they're permeable, they slow the rate of water going into the river and so on. Every time you add more roofs, more roads, more lawns, it increases the rate of runoff. As I said, it does not look very natural to me. Retention ponds are not characteristic of this area. Okay, just reading through here, there's some lots that are going to be less than 60,000 square feet. To me, that's R3 then. That falls under R3. There's been general comment that the surrounding area is R4, but if you compare this, and there's not a diagram of this proposal with the surrounding map, the surrounding area is more consistent with R5, I believe. It may be R4 zone, but the lot size looks more like R5. Okay, so there was another comment about a demand for smaller lot size in Lake Forest. There's Willow Lake, and there's another development to the south of Willow Lake. And these lots are not selling like hotcakes. They've been on the market for maybe approaching a decade now, and they just aren't selling. And Willow Lakes is a very similar outlay and density. Oh, and also in that same regard, I went around the area and I looked. The following, there's 5 homes here that on Ridge Road, Suffolk Lane, and Highway 60 that are for sale. And I think, or I should say they have real estate signs in front of them. And I don't know, it's not common to see that in that area. So the question is, why are those real estate signs there? If you drive down the value of homes in the area, when it comes to transfer taxes and all that, that impacts the city's revenue. And I too question, I'd like to know the history of this site. Why did Dickinson sell to Lake Forest Land Preserve? They probably could have intended to sell it for development, but why did they choose not to? And why does Lake Forest Land Preserve want to sell? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Lloyd Culbertson. I reside at 145 South Suffolk Lane. Could you put the slide of the conceptual site plan back up for me, please? That's good enough. Yeah, that's it, that's it. Thank you very much. I really want to take issue with the new curb cut and road into this proposed subdivision. If you look to the east, Stable Lane is a road that's already built, and it serves all of 2 homes. That's all that can ever be built there, at present anyway. It just makes eminent sense to me to use Stable Lane as the entranceway to this proposed subdivision. And you don't have to go all the way up to the top of the donut to do it. You only have to go in 70 feet, 60 or 70 feet, and cut through that very narrow section of woodland, which is about the same width that you're proposing to cut through on Wesley Road. That way you don't build a new curb cut on Wesley. You're using an existing road, which is arguably way underutilized. And so Stable Lane now, instead of serving just 2 homes, could prospectively be serving 11 homes. I think it makes just good planning sense to use Stable Lane in this fashion and not put another curb cut on Wesley Road, basically a block and a half away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to appear on this matter? Okay, seeing none, we will move to final questions from the commission to either petitioner or staff to provide additional information. See?
Well, I guess my question that I asked at the last meeting was why, why could we not move this development somehow further from Wesley so that it doesn't impact the streetscape so much? As I said before, I'm all in for this arrangement and using the historic, rezoning mechanism that we're sort of experimenting with now, and with some success, I'd say. But in this particular case, I'm struggling with whether we're doing the wrong thing for the right reason, and I don't know that we're really set back far enough. 70 feet isn't really that far. I mean, what is it from this wall to the far window? I mean, we'd be getting pretty close to 60 feet there, maybe. I really think we're probably going to start seeing these houses a lot more than we think. And the streetscape along Wesley is very unique. I mean, I cut through there often just because it's such a nice rural slice of Lake Forest that I'm concerned that we might just be dropping a little bit of Schaumburg in here. And if there was a way we could somehow slip this in another manner, but it just seems like the wetlands are the killer on this thing. And so I'm in a dilemma now because I don't want to be negative about it, but at the same time, I'm all in for the conservation, but I feel like I should be a plan commissioner on this as well. And the questions earlier where we were trying to establish how much of this site's actually buildable, I mean, maybe there's just too many structures here too close to Wesley, and maybe there should be a decrease in the amount of buildings somehow to make this seem a little bit less. I'm just really apprehensive about going forward with this and having it suddenly damage that sort of bucolic character of Wesley. In the house across the street, as Art said, it's very formal, but it's just a real smashing example of old Lake Forest, the old estate era. And then if we suddenly contrast it with this kind of a development, it's, and I know we have the wetlands, but then I'm making a decision almost by extortion. It's just, there's so many negatives with this for me that right now I'm really not in favor of this. I'm not saying I don't like your strategy, and I understand that Wetlands does a lot of these things in order to finance all the great work you do. So I get that concept, but I think we have to be careful with this mechanism that we have available to make sure we always try to use it in the best possible way, lest we start to trivialize it and it starts to get a bad reputation. That works against all of our best interests. I'm not sure. So my question would be, do you think you can't possibly rearrange this a little bit? Maybe slide option 1 down a little further to preserve the northern part of the site, or maybe you don't put as many houses in and that helps. I was even wondering if you had a house or two on the west side and then maybe had a few off Stable Lane just to reduce the size of those two so that you split this apart. If it could almost look like a little enclave of cottages rather than the cul-de-sac development that it looks like now. I'm just, I'm open to keep on looking at it, but right now I'm kind of apprehensive about supporting it. I think it could be better, and I know we're working against a lot of logistics with regard to wetlands and woodlands and so forth. I don't know how you guys feel about it. Maybe they have some...
Would you like them to respond?
Surely, absolutely. I mean, we're here to help.
John, do you want to respond?
Well, I'm going to begin by saying I'm not a land planner. Nick's the land planner. But when you're working like a site like this, I go back to what Mr. Miller said, first of all, is we look at this site, the history of this site as a natural area. And we have to look at this site holistically. There's a lot of things going on in this site that we want to preserve. And we also look at what the potential is of the site down the road. I agree with Mr. Miller that the pond to the north is a tremendous feature. There's not many of those features in town. Look at what the possibilities are at the development of the site to the north. And one of the reasons there's a question, why were we interested in this site? We are interested in this site because we wanted to influence as much of this area as we could to maintain it as open space, to maintain that rural character of this area. So we look at the pond to the north, and we don't want to encroach in that pond. We're in the business of preserving as much land as we can and as preserving as much high-quality land as we can. It's a terrific balance. And also, when you come to the hydrology of the site, we have to take into consideration where's all the water going. All those things mix for us to sort of get to the point where we are today. When Jim said earlier that we've looked at many, many plans, we've looked at many, many plans, and we explored them all. And when we come down to it, this is the plan that makes the most sense for all those factors we're trying to do. What happens for a preserve down the future? How do we get the community to enjoy that pond and appreciate the open space when the next development's made, potentially to the northeast? How do we protect the streetscape? How do we do all those things collectively? How do we manage the water? How do we not impact the valuable site? So it's pretty complex, and we've looked at it many times. There was a question, Mr. Hammond talked about the concept of conservation development. This is how we've preserved so much land in Lake Forest, is through this concept, through conservation development. And this is how we've achieved so much in our community at a very high rate of expense for land. So all these things are balanced together in order for us to do these kinds of things. Did I answer the question to a degree, I hope?
Oh, yeah, I understand that these are the reasons you got to where you're at. And
right.
I guess we're at that true definition of a problem, the recognition of the existence of irreconcilable differences, so.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, staff response to the public testimony. Kathy?
I don't know that I have anything specific to add. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are some that you have for me.
Okay. Well, board discussion and comment. I'd like to lead off this discussion. Coming into this evening's meeting and going back to our first meeting we had in this October, my major hurdle to get over with respect on this project was the setback. I asked a lot of questions at the last meeting, and Commissioner Freeman, I thank you for your line of questioning and so forth, but I think that I'm satisfied now, given the explanation of how all of these moving parts fit together that was described in terms of the wetland and the preservation. And, 73 feet from the right-of-way, plus another, I don't know how many feet, between the right-of-way and the edge of the pavement, in my mind, is a considerable distance. And, you know, after the last meeting, I had this thought in my head that the answer I got to that question is it was 30 feet. Well, now that I realize it's much greater than that, it's 73 or 93, depending on what you're measuring from. That, I think, is plenty sufficient. But when you add the second dot in condition number 2, that the conservation easement be established, number 1, and then the area must be maintained as a vegetative buffer to preserve the natural landscape of Wesley Road, I think goes a long way in meeting the questions and concerns that I had at the last meeting. And so for that reason, I think that this project makes sense to me. I think it's well thought out, and I would be very interested in the comments of other commissioners as well.
Well, one of my main concerns was also the setback from Wesley, and I think that the other members, you know, Commissioner Freeman also addressed those concerns. And driving down Wesley, I felt that the 73-foot setback was consistent with some of the neighboring properties. So I feel comfortable with that, especially with the buffer that they're describing. I'm mostly really impressed that they want to do a conservation subdivision like this. I mean, I know this is something that Lake Forest is encouraging, but I do think it's something that is a benefit to our community in the long run, because we are really preserving a lot of this wonderful open land, wetlands, things that, you know, our residents can enjoy. The density of the project, in a way, I'm kind of glad that we're at this point, that we have this option, that we can like compact these homes into this smaller footprint, as opposed to having it where there was 10 of them all spread out in this big lot, in these larger lots, and thereby, you know, maybe disturbing the natural environment. So in general, I'm in favor of the project. I think that they probably have gone through a lot of options on how to access the site, and the roadway leading from Wesley, to me, does not seem excessive.
Mike?
Yeah, the Wesley access and the buffer, I'm actually less troubled with that aspect of it than any of it. And that's why I wanted to compare it to what I consider to be fairly easily buildable lots in what would be a traditional subdivision. What I'm struggling with, and again, I very much appreciate, and I have the benefit of living backing up to the Prairie Wolf Slough, and I'm hugely appreciative. Not always of the coyotes and my small dogs and things like that, but I'm hugely appreciative of the concept. We have a tremendous community where we can benefit from that. I really feel very fortunate to live in country living so close to where I work, and I'm a huge fan of the mission. I really am, and I appreciate the trails and the addressing those issues and the needs of the community in that regard. What I struggle with conceptually as a plan commissioner is, if we were to be fair about it, the reason we have to allow these kinds of developments is because in this particular instance, it's otherwise unbuildable. At least at this density, it's unbuildable. And I struggle with that because I think that there's been great attention paid to where they're clustered on the site, to the water issues that are there, the sensitivity to the neighbors and the buffers, both from this wonderful country road, Wesley, and to the neighboring property. I think you've been incredibly sensitive to that. I just fundamentally disagree with the density. I think a smaller footprint, given what the land allows, is more fitting with the natural landscape, the surrounding community. And so I struggle because I don't have the other issues. I really don't. I mean, I think those have been addressed in a very thoughtful way. I just don't know that, as much as I believe in the concept and the application of this principle of land use, I don't think it was intended to provide increased density where land otherwise doesn't allow for it. It's meant to preserve, but it's not meant to create density. And that's my struggle with this particular plan. I think I could see being in favor of something with slightly lower density, but I really struggle with the 9 lots. I mean, I'm open to comments of the other commissioners and persuasion, but that is my fundamental issue. All the other ones I was able to work through. This one I'm stuck on. And I'm torn because I think it's a tremendous use of the property. I just struggle with the density.
Yeah, and in this particular case, my issue with it being so close to Wesley is that that density, I think, is going to impact the streetscape. If I'd be less worried about the density if it was further away from that particular feature, which I think is a good part of our community. And so I think the density issue in that regard, I mean, that's what I'm struggling with. The 70 to 90 feet, I can deal with that, but not for that many houses so close to the road. I guess that's what's going to bother me when I drive by. I'm going to go, yeah, I was right, and I should have said something. That's where I'm at with it too. So the density that close to Wesley, I think it's going to be something, once it's done, you can't change it, and perhaps maybe there's another go around.
Is there a proposal or motion on either density or to approve this with the condition as recommended by staff?
My struggle with that is I would not want to tie the hands of the developers. The developer is in the best position to determine, looking at what is available land or what a density. I mean, I would just be hesitant to say. I mean, is the suggestion that we should pick a number, that we should tell them which lots to remove? I don't think that's my role. I struggle with that.
I would also offer that we've heard your issues. I think there may be some further explanation of code provisions that may be helpful. There may be some opportunity to look at density or slight shifts, but also, given that you just have 4 members, it may be appropriate to continue it, give us a time to respond to those few issues that you've raised, and then bring it back for really what could be an abbreviated conclusion at your next meeting. So I would just offer that as an option.
I think that's a great idea, and I would welcome the education on that, Kathy. The only thing I would say, perhaps, as an amendment to your proposal is, should we then at least take up the first portion of the request, which is a zoning change from R5 to R4, and then from that you could derive a very specific direction for the commission as to what our role is, what's allowed under the provisions of the ordinance.
If you choose to do so, you could certainly take action on the zoning portion of it. We would not move that forward to the city council until the subdivision was paired with it. But that would certainly help to give the property owner and developer a sense of whether you're supportive of that R4 zoning.
Okay, so I mean, then maybe we would just say tentatively, that's just direction then. It would, because I think it also would inform what direction the city gives us as to these density issues. So I would just say I don't take issue with the R4 zoning. I think it's appropriate. Additional review of the density and how it fits within this overall land use, I'm open to persuasion on that.
Well, I concur that I support and will tonight and at the next meeting, if it is continued, that we approve the rezoning to R4.
I agree.
Okay. So do we need a formal motion on that?
If you want to take action on the zone change, you should do a formal motion, and then you should also have a motion to continue the public hearing on the subdivision portion.
I would make a motion just to continue both, Chairman, if we're going to do it, and then, but I think for direction purposes, it's helpful for the developer and the city to know kind of where we're at on the R4 versus R5.
Okay, one thing I'd like to say before we make
Can
the
I get a
motion.
second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, it's before us, go ahead.
Okay. One thing I would like to say is that, as I'm not struggling with the definition of the density, and that if we find some explanation in a text, that then I'll be satisfied. I mean, for me, when I see that plan and what I know about environment, that's gonna, I mean, all of the land behind there is going to be basically behind there. So when you drive down Wesley, you're not gonna see the pond or the wetlands or any of that stuff. You're gonna see the development. And it's gonna look like we approve something that doesn't belong in that neighborhood. It's too close to the road and it's too dense. And that's what I'm worried about. And so I guess my concern is that I think we're creating an inconsistent environment that's in full view. And it's not a matter of how we, you know, describe it verbally or in text. It's not rhetorical for me. It's physical in its environment, which is planning. So that, I just want to put that in there because I don't want to mislead. I mean, sometimes I think you make a mistake giving a developer or a petitioner some semi-approval, because then you're almost obligated to go all the way, because why are you wasting their time and why are you changing their properties, you know, stratification, you know?
Well, I think rather than taking a vote on the motion, I would suggest what we do is let the record show that there's a sense of 3 of the 4 members here this evening that we're in favor of the rezoning to R4, and that we continue that matter to the next meeting, along with a public hearing. So, again, assuming we have 5 members, since we've got 2 recusals at the next meeting, then we would have, I think, an opportunity for staff to work with petitioner to see whether or not the reservations that we've heard expressed here tonight could be taken into account. Does that make sense? Okay, very good. And I would also say that I will discuss directly with Commissioner Henry, who couldn't be here tonight, that he review both the public hearing, or excuse me, the introductory session from October and the tape of this meeting to make sure that he's brought up to speed.
Can I ask the chair for clarification? Does your motion then also include keeping the public hearing open until December, or whenever the petitioner wants to come back before us? With that, I would second.
The continuation.
Correct, your motion, yeah.
So just to clarify, I think I heard a motion originally from Commissioner Freeman that was seconded by Commissioner Ruggles. That motion was amended or tabled?
Well, I was suggesting that we just have an expression of the sense of the commission as opposed to a formal motion, so we don't get entangled between now and the next meeting.
Just for clarity, there should be a motion continuing this matter and holding the public hearing open, and the motion could be as simple as that.
Then I'll withdraw my earlier motion and just make a motion that we enter and continue this to a further date, including public hearing on both the rezoning from R5 to R4 and the petitioner's request for a tentative plat.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Okay. Thank you. We look forward to tying a bow around this one. Okay. Item number 6, any opportunity for the public to address the Plan Commission on matters not on the agenda? Is there anybody who wishes to comment? Seeing none, a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
It's been moved to second.
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We are adjourned.
This is mine, right? It's yours? Oh, boy. I think that's a good motion. Most excellent motion. Put the pressure on. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't mean to obstruct that petition, but I've just got issues.